What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king, welcoming you to the finale of Let's Play Animal Crossing New Horizons. I said before that this was going to be a little bit of a different flavor of an episode, and that is true. This is not going to be a traditional do stuff episode like every other episode in this Let's Play. I kind of wanted to mark this as sort of a seminal moment because this did end up being one of the longest Let's Plays that I've ever done on the channel, and certainly one of the most time-intensive Let's Plays I've ever put together on this channel. But I also kind of wanted to just look back on this game and just sort of talk about how important it is, but also just how important the series is to me, because I don't think I've ever really truly reconciled with that. I've talked about it in the past a little bit, but Animal Crossing does mean a lot to me in a lot of ways, but it also, I think, means a lot to a lot of other people. I mean, New Horizons in general was, I think, so much more important than any of us can even really wrap our heads around. This came at such an important time, not just for, this series and for Nintendo, but for people in general. Like, we all needed something so badly when this game came out. I mean, we were less than a month into one of the worst, most pivotal experiences that the world has gone through in the last several decades. And it was such a strange time because nobody really had anything to do. Nobody knew what to do. And this game it appeared at the perfect moment. It was tailor-made to rise to this exact occasion where everybody was cooped up. So many people were out of work or not able to go to work or were doing far less work, and they just needed a distraction. And Animal Crossing New Horizons was perfect for that for so many people. People that probably would have never found this game otherwise. Don't get me wrong, Animal Crossing had an audience before New Horizons. It was very important to a lot of people, myself included. I've been here since the beginning with this series. I mean, I guess not technically if you include Dobutsu no Mori on the N64, but we're talking the GameCube version. Animal Crossing, also known as Population Growing. That was the first GameCube game that I ever owned. It was the very first video game that I ever paid for with my own money. Before that, I mean, Nintendo 64 games, I didn't buy those because I had no money. I had no income. I was 7 years old when that console pretty much gasped its last gasp. And so the GameCube was like the first time where I had the ability to actually buy video games. But even then, it was years after the fact because I've talked about this before, but I was a little bit of a late bloomer, a little bit of a late arrival to many popular video game consoles just because I didn't grow up all that rich. I didn't grow up. I wouldn't quite classify my upbringing as poor, but it was certainly like lower middle class, where just things like this, video games, were a luxury for me. And so when we did get our hands on them, it was usually by the time they were obsolete. Like, I didn't get a Nintendo 64 until 1999. I didn't get a GameCube until, 2 years before the Wii was out. And even that was like a free hand-me-down from another more well-off family member. So I don't even really count that one because it was a gift. Animal Crossing was the very first game I added to the collection. It came with Mario Kart Double Dash, and then Animal Crossing was next. And I didn't even have a memory card. I know I've told this story before, but I love to reiterate it because a lot of people think it's hilarious. I discovered very early on that Animal Crossing for the GameCube actually ran off of the GameCube's internal RAM, as opposed to needing any memory cards to actually save it, to keep its data going necessarily, or it didn't need the actual storage space inside the GameCube to keep running. The disc was more than enough to run on its own. So what you could do with Animal Crossing is you could put the game into the system, you could then launch it and then take the disc out, and the game would still run perfectly fine. It would do absolutely everything. It would never freeze. So there would be moments where I would do that. I would turn it on, I'd take the disc out, I'd put it away, and I would just leave the GameCube running for months at a time because I didn't have a memory card. I literally couldn't save my my town that I had created at the time. So for months it was like this until finally I was able to get the smallest size of memory card you could get for the GameCube, which I want to say was something like 59 memory blocks or something like that. It was so, an Animal Crossing town fit on it with 2 blocks to spare. It was so small that you really couldn't even put any other games on it. But that was enough. That was enough for me. And I put that sucker in there, and even though I had Mario Kart, Animal Crossing was the higher priority. I had already invested so much time into this game, I was like, I need to save all that. And that town, I still have that saved on a memory card, although I think it's corrupted, but I still have that saved to this day as like one of my biggest core memories as a gamer, just putting so much time and effort into that and, learning how to fish in the game and getting better at it, eventually collecting everything there was in the game. One of the I think something that's been lost in subsequent Animal Crossing games that I really valued in that game was collecting the models, which you could actually use to sort of build almost your own little mini version of the town you were putting together. And some of them were purchasable, some of them were basic ones, but there were a lot of unique ones that were like tied to certain events and whatnot. And going after all of those was actually what I thought was the true end game of Animal Crossing, as well as, of course, paying off your debt entirely and getting yourself the statue, which it was actually tiered based on whoever got it done first, because in that game, you had your 4 houses, so 4 players could move in, and I had siblings who played, but they didn't play as often as I did. And so I got the gold statue because they would give that to the first player, and then there would be a silver statue and a bronze statue, and I guess the 4th player could just get screwed, I suppose. Like, I don't really know what else the game expected beyond that. But yeah, it would like tier the statues based on whoever paid their debts off first. And so I had the big gold statue right outside in front of the train station. And that was like one of my biggest early accomplishments in gaming, because I think at the time I was like 11 or something like that, 11 years old, something along those lines. But I made so many memories with that game. I remember how rudimentary the multiplayer, well, not multiplayer, but the save transferring system was, where you could go to other people's islands, but you needed to put their memory card in the GameCube and then travel that way. And there was like a bunch of weird ways you could mix with it, all of the glitches that you could intentionally force, like running into Blanca, or possibly getting the gyroid face, which was another glitch that you could do, like uncovering and discovering all of these amazing things. And then also a lot of the like little NES games that were inside of it too. That was such a big deal to me back then. Nintendo would never do that now. They still, for some reason now, think you need to charge $5 per NES game or an exorbitant online subscription because they think that's what they're worth. But playing like golf inside of Animal Crossing, or playing Balloon Fight in there, or I think like Wario Woods or Excite Bike, like it was like my first exposure to a lot of those sorts of games, because I never really had access to older systems before that. Like, everyone either had the state-of-the-art stuff around me, or I just had my own video games. So being able to play some of these really like 1980s era games, that was my first exposure to a lot of that. So that also meant a lot to me as well. And all of this, just amounted to a very special experience where I hold Animal Crossing, that specific version of Animal Crossing, very near and dear to my heart. But then, of course, the series goes on. And while I never owned a DS myself, I shared a save file with my sister for Wild World, and we'd play that one a lot too. And I remember like in particular, there was one year when I was like in junior high, or maybe high school. I might have been in high school, or like just barely in high school, like a freshman or a sophomore. And we did like a family vacation where all we literally did was go somewhere to just chill and swim in a swimming pool, because where I lived, the climate's too cold for that. So we went somewhere like down south where it was much warmer, and we just swam for like an entire week. And other than that, we just chilled. And it was over the summer break. And almost every waking moment that I had the opportunity to while we were on that trip, I was playing Wild World. And I just remember spending so many hours just trying to, do everything in that game, and how it did a lot of the same things that the GameCube game was doing, but there was a few novel aspects. That was, of course, the introduction to the rolling pin world, which is what we see in Animal Crossing now, where you see the perspective sort of just roll over the horizon, as opposed to the GameCube version where everything was grouped up into sectors and it was more of a top-down camera angle. That's actually probably why I'm sure a lot of people who've been watching this Let's Play wonder why I shift to that angle so much. One, just because my island, the way it was set up, I just think it's better for visibility. But two, I'm just used to that more. Like the default camera angle in a lot of these games, I know that's been the thing since the DS one, since Wild World, but I'm more used to the overhead angle because that's closer to the GameCube Animal Crossing. So that's how I always played these games, and that's what I remember the most, and it just feels more natural to me when actually trying to just engage with the game in general. I like it a little bit more just for visibility's sake. But I mean, I also in this game, with how cluttered it gets, I feel like New Horizons in particular needs it more than some of the previous ones do. It's not as necessary in Wild World or City Folk, where you're not really terraforming things. The only thing that's going to ever be in your way is trees, but for the most part, the game is pretty good at framing things for you, so it's not a huge issue. It was still different, though. It was still new. I remember KK Slider would actually play like in the Roost in that game, which, Brewster's Cafe. And that was where we got the introduction to Brewster. And that was always different and unique. And I mean, for the most part, Wild World was pretty samey to the GameCube. It just had that different perspective. And it did add a few things in here and there as well. But it was amazing how much was packed into this little tiny game that felt like it wasn't going to be able to do near as much as the GameCube, and yet did more, actually. And then City Folk came along, and a lot of people didn't like City Folk, but, I mean, the big thing about it was the city, going to the city to experience all these things. And I remember how it was, like, supposed to be super novel, but in the grand scheme of things, it really actually was just a way of the game sequestering a bunch of stuff in another area, and it actually made your own city, your own town, feel a lot more barren as a result, because it was taking away a lot of crucial things outside of like Nook's Cranny and the Able Sisters and whatnot. So you were kind of left to just not do as much in town, but then you were expected to go to the city to, make a day of things. And a lot of people didn't love that format too much. I appreciated it in a way. I think it was just because of the way that Animal Crossing framed the city life. It was so not a thing that exists at all. It felt like it was really trying to evoke this almost like, how do I even want to put this? Almost this like Italian or even like, like I almost say like Venice, like novelty feeling, or maybe it's like France. I don't know. Like European, this very central middle European vibe to it, with the music and the aesthetics of the entire thing, where it was supposed to be like, oh, you're experiencing like a completely different climate and culture every time you go to the city. But then when you're back in town, it's the familiar Animal Crossing you know and love. And in that way, I think I really appreciated it. The more I think back on that game, even though it's been a long time since I played it, the more I think back on that game, the less merit I have for it that I can give it. Like the less I can think about that, it's like, oh, this is what made this game special. Because all I remember about that game was collecting the really expensive sets for furniture, and that's kind of it, which is why I think I'm the most eager to actually go back and let's play that game someday, just because it's the one I know the least and would love to kind of relearn to love, or possibly not like, all over again. And then came New Leaf, which I've talked about this before. I didn't really play New Leaf too much, but obviously New Leaf it's worth mentioning. It's important because it set the stage for so many things that New Horizons would build upon. It didn't quite introduce crafting and terraforming, which is what New Horizons is famous for, but it was like a step shy of that, while also retaining a lot of the features that the previous Animal Crossing games had. And so in a lot of ways, New Leaf almost is like a greatest hits experience, where it's just got so much of the old and so much of the new, while still retaining the old Animal Crossing formula that was present for those first 4 games. New Horizons is kind of the one that evolves the formula well beyond that into almost a completely different genre. But that basic life sim experience, which is, I would say, that's actually what defines the first 4 Animal Crossing games. Those are life sims, okay? They got a little bit of elements of RPG strategy, but they're life sims. That's what they are. New Horizons is barely a life sim. New Horizons is a sandbox game. It is closer to a Minecraft than it is to I wouldn't say the old Animal Crossings, but like The Sims, for instance. There's so much that has been stripped away from the life simulation aspect, and a lot has been simplified, but you have, so much more freedom and so much more control over redecorating and changing everything you want. Like, me personally, I do enjoy the terraforming and the crafting aspects, but after a while, I think I'm just, like, over it. This is why you would find, like, throughout this Let's Play, I would change things a ton, and then I would just stop cold for a while, is because I just don't have that creative energy to reinvigorate myself over and over and over again as I played the game. I know a lot of people do. There are people who treat their entire island like a canvas, and they just are constantly shifting and changing things whenever they get tired of one thing or another. I'm not that way. I like to sort of bask and marinate in the fruits of my labor and just let it sit and enjoy it. That's how I've always been, and so I definitely don't have that level of creativity that I see out of so many other people, but that's what it makes New Horizons so special, is it's got a lot for everybody. I will say that probably the people who are the most disappointed by New Horizons are the people who were expecting it to evolve the mechanics of all the other Animal Crossings the most, because that's where it falls the most short. It isn't bad, but it definitely doesn't give the same vibe or hit in the same way that the older Animal Crossings do. It's not as much about growing relationships with your villagers. It's not as much about building up the reputation of your town, although that is, I would say, still pretty much a part of it, but from a different angle, I suppose. It's more from like a very strict progression angle, while in something like New Leaf, with all of the projects that you finish along the way, you actually can, you feel like every single thing you've done, every single new spot or environment in the town feels like another step in not just the most rudimentary sense of progress, but in like personal progress. You know what I mean? This personal growth and these personal stakes you have with your town, and it's incremental. While New Horizons is just like instant jumps. Get out of the tutorial, get KK, and then get to 5 stars. And that's like the only 3 steps that matter. And after that, in between, you're just getting all of these awesome things that you can work with as you go. Really, most of the progress is sequestered in the tutorial to the KK, or getting KK to the island for the first time step, so which is 3 stars. So it's a little bit different in that way. But I will also say that in that way, New Horizons was the easiest to do a Let's Play in this format of, because for the first like 40, 50 episodes, it just worked so well. It was just a constant, steady stream of going from one thing to another, unlocking new things, getting new ideas, having new things to work with. And that's cool. While the older Animal Crossing games are more of just making a life of it, making your house nicer. And I don't know, it's different for everybody, but that's what I think what makes New Horizons so special, and why it was so important to people back when it came out, is because people needed this. I mean, I've said before how much New Horizons just, it gives you so much to do. So much to do. For example, I'm going to give you guys my playtime on this exact file. This isn't even including my original Animal Crossing New Horizons file that I played on my own time. This is just the Let's Play file. I have put almost 300 hours, 287 hours into this file for this Let's Play. So, like I said, I've put a lot in this. This is exactly why I was saying I think I've almost done too much with this Let's Play, is because there was so many things to do in between just to move to the next step, and that's game time, man. That's the time and the hours that people were putting in all the way back then, and that's me rushing. That's me trying to get this done as fast as possible so that I can record the next step, so that I can show you the next thing in the game. That's not how normal people play. For the most part, people are just basking in it. People were just using it as an escape from reality, and there's a reason why it was so important to people. There's a reason why it's so special in that way. I have nothing but respect for this game and nothing but love for this game, even though I am aware that it has faults. I don't think it's perfect. I'll never think that it's perfect. I don't think a single Animal Crossing game is, for that matter. But it's special in a way that's completely different from the rest of the series, and I think puts it in a place where we're going to look back on this game someday, especially, 1, 2, 3 Animal Crossings from now, and I'm sure they're going to try to recapture the magic, but without the circumstances, without the context, they never will. New Horizons is always going to be legendary for exemplifying an entire period in the history of the world that no other video game was able to capitalize upon as well as this one. It's like genuinely sentimental, and it has a legacy to it for that reason. That's what makes this game so special. I don't know if I was able to capture any of that in this Let's Play, but I certainly wanted to at least evoke a feeling. I sort of wanted to give you guys a secondary experience to this entire thing, and also just, I guess, search my own feelings about this game, which I think, I came to the conclusion when when I came to the conclusion that this is all, said and done, that I really do think that this game is special. I love it. I love it a lot. It's one of my all-time favorite video games for that reason. I mean, I do still very fondly think of the older Animal Crossing games. I still think Population Growing is excellent, and I go back and forth on that game and this game as to whether they're my favorite in the series, but I can't deny what New Horizons did for everybody, what it did for me, what it did for everybody else. I will admit I didn't have as much of a I had a very different experience with COVID from most because my world actually didn't change all that much, unfortunately. Like, there were some basic things, of course, like, you know, the basic expectations and whatnot. But where I live, the world unfortunately refused to come to a halt because the community and the people that I live around just aren't like that. It sucks, and I hated it, honestly, in a lot of ways because it made me feel very uncomfortable, and it was very dangerous, and there were people that were hurt because of it, and I know that, but I didn't have a choice. And so in that way, I didn't really get a lot of that like alone time and that lot of cooped up time that a lot of other people had with Animal Crossing, but it was still special to me. It was still like, I mean, I think I played it for, I want to say like 5-6 months straight before I finally gave up on it. Although I was, like I said, I was weird because when I played it on my own time, I went Southern Hemisphere because I purposefully wanted to be weird. I don't know why I did that. It just meant that I missed out on all of the things that everybody else was experiencing, all these new events that were coming through, like Bunny Day and the International Museum Day and all, you know, all of the other events that happened around that time. I completely missed out on them because I decided to explicitly put my time zone out of whack, and that was dumb. But other than that one issue, like, I was there with everybody else. We were all swapping stories, playing the game together. It was just this like big community thing. And I mean, I know there was like certain circles of the internet, especially over like villager trading, which was so weird, where there was a bit of toxicity, but it's largely like 95% such a wholesome experience that I don't think I've ever seen and probably never will see again with any one video game. And I respect that a lot. Like, that means, I think, so much. We don't get enough of those nowadays. I think of all of these games that become mega successful and, you know, bring in this huge audience, and they've got these multiplayer aspects to them where everybody has to engage with one another, and they always devolve into toxicity so quickly. I think back to when I was super obsessed with Overwatch back when that game first came out, and there was like a 2-month window with that game where it was magical. It was like everybody was excited to play. There was almost no toxicity whatsoever. It was just like finding this crazy new community of players before eventually the blizzardness took over and it turned into actually one of the most, if not the most toxic experience I've ever experienced in a video game later down the road. And that's about as close as it gets, but New Horizons was that way for like 6 months, and you know, I still sort of passively engage with the existing Animal Crossing community, and it's still that way. It's smaller now. It's not the millions and millions of players anymore, but there's still a lot. I mean, I don't know if you've ever gone on the Animal Crossing subreddit, but it's still really active, like way more than most other subreddits where their game is 4 years removed from release. So I don't know. It's still awesome to see it. It's still awesome to see the creativity that everybody has, the way that everybody engages with each other over this game. I think that's just what I love about it so much. There's so little to be upset about with this game. There's so little for other people to find to be upset about with this game. It's just something awesome. It's something so cool, and I don't know. This is what I want more out of video games. Not necessarily Animal Crossing-like experiences, but just experiences that bring people together in this way. And I think that's going to be very hard for us to replicate again if it ever happens again. But I want to remember this for what it is. I want this Let's Play to be sort of a seminal like moment in time that like sort of marked that. I know I'm years late at this point. This was a very long endeavor to make this Let's Play happen, but I'm glad I did it. I'm very glad I did it. Somewhere down the road, I am going to be jumping into another Animal Crossing game. I think one of these days I need to go back to Population Growing and do a proper completed Let's Play of that. It'll certainly be shorter than this one was, but I am going to do it someday. I want to do a proper Let's Play, or at least mostly, of City Folk and see what that game's all about. And then, I don't know, maybe one of these days I'll do New Leaf, just because that'll be a relatively new experience for me as somebody who only played a dozen or so hours of it and barely remembers it. And maybe that'll be interesting. I don't know. I'll just leave all that on the table. Poor Wild World's not going to get really a look in, but I mean, it's thinking back on it, it's the least interesting one to actually go back and take a look at, but I digress. I had a good time here. I had a really good time with this game. I love our villagers. I love the way that the island turned out. There were definitely some areas that I could have improved upon things. There were some changes I could have made. There was a few regrets I had. I definitely should have been breaking tools more often. I didn't realize how important that was going to be early on, and I just kind of fell into my normal rhythm of how I play this game and didn't end up really shooting for the moon in that way. It's like you got to break 100 tools just to get to the axe, stuff like that. You know what I mean? And plus, you know, I didn't need to do a ton of resource farming. Like a lot of the resource farming I did in the early portion of the game carried me through the rest of the experience for the most part. I got pretty low on a few things like wood and gold nuggets, but aside from that, I was good for most of the playthrough without really having to re-up my materials all that much, because it's not that hard to actually engage with this crafting system. It sort of builds upon itself very easily, and it becomes very simple. Paradise Planning was awesome. Like I said, the only reason I didn't play more of it is because I did so much in such a small amount of time. I think I burned myself out on it. I mean, I did... by the end of the series, over 35 homes. So or it was 45. It was 45, I think. Sorry. So I did a lot with that thing, and it's a blast. It's a fun time. If I were playing on my own, I would absolutely do 1 or 2 homes every single day if I were playing this game daily. It's so nice, and so even though home decorating isn't like my favorite thing to do, it's just a nice sidetrack experience that just gives you more things to do. It just gives you more rewards. It's so rewarding to engage with everything that this game does, and it's such a positive feedback loop. It's really hard to describe. Like, I can't think of another game that tickles all of these positive aspects in the way that Animal Crossing New Horizons does. I'm still gushing over it, and I probably always will be. And you may just say, "Oh, it's not fun." Well, that's fine. You're allowed to have that opinion. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't know. I sit back and I admire this game for all that it is so much, and I just kind of wanted to make that point here in the finale. But it's been a fun journey, you guys. Thank you for coming along with me all this time. This was such a long experience, but it's time finally for us to move on into something else. So with all of that said, thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this episode and this Let's Play very, very much. And I'll see you all back in Middle-earth next time.